Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we're doing a VCT Americas season preview for the team Sentinels. If you know Valorant, you know Sentinels. You know that this team is the most popular team in all of the VCT, and if you follow the VCT, if you follow Valorant Esports in general, you know that this team hasn't been good in quite some time. They win the very first Masters tournament in 2021, the very first LAN tournament for Valorant, and since then they have not been able to reach those same heights. They go the rest of 2021 without winning a tournament, but they still look very good. 2022 was a disastrous year. They rebuilt the roster for 2023, and it just did not work. Looking at the 2023 placements, they got a bad draw. They had to play Fnatic in the very first round. Fnatic would, of course, go on to win that tournament, so obviously Sentinels lost to them, 17th to 32nd placement, and then in the Americas regular season, it did not get better. They placed 7th, just barely missing playoffs. The interesting thing about that, though, is they actually had the same record as Evil Geniuses, who took up that 6th place spot to make playoffs, a 4-5 record. So if they had just gotten one tiebreaker over them, they would have actually made playoffs. And if they gotten just one more win, they would have made it as well. But that, of course, did not happen, and that actually did pave the way for Evil Geniuses to become world champions. So moving on to LCQ, they placed 4th. They had a decent run, but it just felt like this roster had come to a head. So if you're Rob Moore, the CEO of Sentinels and the management team behind this roster, what do? This team had a mediocre year last year, but you still have a lot of players who are world champions. TenZ, Saci, and Pekata are all world champions. So you have a lot of talent here, but maybe the pieces are just in the wrong order. Maybe the pieces that you really need aren't there yet. So what are the changes they made? Players out are Marved, and players in are John QT of M80 and Zelsis, who was previously on Cloud9. John QT will be this team's IGL, and so far in the offseason, it looks like he is exactly what this team needed. I think the biggest weakness roster-wise that they had last year is they didn't really have a star IGL. They had Def, who was a IGL 4 exit, but it didn't really work on this team. Then, of course, you have Marv stepped in, who has had IGL experience before, but is not known for that. And as expected, it didn't really go very well. All credit to Marv, he did it as good as he possibly could, but there was just no saving the season at that point. But with the offseason tournaments, John QT has been a blessing. It seems like he has this team focused. He has this team dedicated. He has this team looking like potentially one of the best teams in the world. And of course, Zelsis, if you know Zelsis, you know that he's a vibes guy. He's a very good player. He hasn't always looked elite or anything, but he brings a great energy to the team. He's very dedicated. He's very focused. He can be the silly, wacky presence that you need on a team to keep things loose, but he can also turn it serious and get stuff done when he needs to. So from a roster standpoint, those are two extremely important additions that really have seemed like they've turned this team around. Championships won by the org are won. Of course, that was Masters Reykjavik all the way back in 2021. I do not count the actual first Masters, which was a regional Masters that was before Iceland Reykjavik back in 2021. So technically Reykjavik is Masters 2, but I don't count Masters 1 as an international tournament because it was all just regional, but that's a debate for another time. For the 2023 MVP, I chose Zekken. I feel like he was the most consistent player throughout the year. If you look at his stats, he did have the best stats out of all of them. And throughout all the bad stuff last year, throughout all the roster changes, the coaching change, all that drama, Zekken remained consistently a very good player, and I'm very excited to see how he does this season. So looking at the 2023 stats for all these players except for John QT playing in the Tier 1 system. Starting off with TenZ, the longest standing member of this roster. Last year, it was a rough year for TenZ. He had 357 kills, 369 deaths, 151 assists for key ratio of 0.96. He started the year playing Jett and Sage. He also tried out some Neon and Yoru by the end of it, as well as some KO. For TenZ, this is the year. This is the year to truly prove that you can get back to your 2021 form. TenZ has not looked the same since 2021. 2022 was a rough year for him, and then it was followed up by another rough year. If any other player has the kind of in-game performance that TenZ has had for the past 2 years, they're not on a roster, straight up. I don't think he's been terrible or anything, because I don't think he's a bad player. I don't think he was a bad player last year and the year before that. I just think that overall, when the roster wasn't doing very well, it did affect TenZ's play. As Rob Moore said in his interview with Riot, that's a great interview, by the way, you should go check it out. He said that TenZ was not having fun playing the game last year, and he excels when he's having fun, and I absolutely do believe that. I think TenZ is a guy that doesn't really thrive under pressure. When everything's on him, he tends to kind of collapse. So I think with Zekken now probably taking over that duelist role, at least that's what they've been running in the offseason so far, him playing Omen and KO, and he'll probably play Yoru as well. That should be a much better fit for him. If you can play TenZ to his strengths, he absolutely can be a top 10, even top 5 player in the world. So this is the year to prove that it can happen, because I don't know if I see TenZ having another rough year and then still being on the active roster. Moving on to Zekken, he had 548 kills, 499 deaths, 181 assists for key ratio of 1.09. He played Raze, Breach, Jett, Sova, and Skye. So with TenZ starting the year as the main duelist, Zekken was kind of playing the secondary duelist role, playing Raze on maps where TenZ would play Sage, but that didn't really work out. So when we saw TenZ sit out and also TenZ switch roles when he got back into the active roster, when he took that break when he was sick, Zekken was playing the main duelist, and so far he's been very good on it. He's been great in the offseason as well, and he should continue his strong play into this season. Again, he was their most consistent player last year, and I don't see why that should change. I think it should get better. I think that 1.09, that's low for what this kid's ceiling is. I really believe in Zekken, and I cannot wait to see what he does. Moving on to Saucy, he had 458 kills, 486 deaths, 238 assists for key ratio of 0.94. Played a lot of characters last year, including Skye, Viper, Sova, Omen, Cypher, and Brimstone. So a wide variety of characters, and definitely he struggled. A 0.94 is not terrible for the roles that he played, but you definitely want his stats to look better. And overall, it was a similar story with him and Pancata, where they were brought to this roster. They didn't really know English. It was, their second language. It took them a minute to learn it. Those two players just really weren't comfortable at the start. Now they are. Now they know what their role is. I mean, we'll get to Pancata later because that's a whole other discussion. But Sassy, knowing what the mission is, knowing how this team works now, being comfortable with these players, these numbers should absolutely go up. I do think the fact that he was on Loud for the Champions run back in 2022 maybe made Sassy and Pancata be a bit overrated. I'm kind of seeing that right now with the Evil Geniuses roster, where, that roster's just been split up, but I think everybody's still expecting these players to play to a world championship level, and I'm sorry, that's just not going to happen. Some of them will, some of them won't, and I think the evidence for that is Sassy and Pancata having rough years after being on a world championship winning roster. It's hard to adjust, especially when you're on a team that is so good, and then you get to this team and then things just aren't working as well, and things can fall apart quickly, as we saw last year. But Saucy should be a lot more comfortable this year, and I do expect his numbers to get a lot better. Moving on to one of their offseason additions in Zelsis. He is returning to this organization. He was on it very briefly for LCQ in 2022. He had 589 kills, 586 deaths, 246 assists with key ratio of 1.00. Zelsis played any character that the team wanted him to on Cloud9, including Phoenix, Neon, Sage, Killjoy, Breach, and Cypher. I probably missed some because basically how I get the characters that these people play is I go to Liquipedia and I look at all the tournaments and look at what the character list is, but the character list on the stats page only shows 3 characters, so I did go to VLR, which does show more, but even that says sometimes like +5 and you can't see what the +5 was. So I don't know if I missed any characters, but the point is a lot of these players played a lot of different characters, including Zelsis, but unlike most players on the Sentinels roster last year, Zelsis on Cloud9 was playing a prominent role, just being that flex player, and he's known to do that. He's known to be a player that can just play at any spot that you need him to and be very good at it. Well, maybe not very good. I don't think he's a player that is elite at any one role, but when he is playing that support role, you can slot him anywhere and he'll do good. He will at least be a serviceable player. So we'll probably see him playing some Smoke, some Initiator, probably a bit of Sentinel as well. We'll see how it all shakes out for Zelsis, but as he came into this roster expecting to be the extra, now he's on the active roster. He is going to be the permanent player, at least for the time being. I'll get to that. Again, we have to get to Pancata. But I would be shocked if Zelsis wasn't playing at least most of the matches this year. Moving on to their new IGL in John QT, he had 864 kills, 765 deaths, 379 assists for key ratio of 1.12. On M80 in the Tier 2 system in North America, he played Killjoy, Astra, Breach, and Cypher. So a flexible kind of player, mainly playing Sentinel with Cypher and Killjoy. We'll probably see that continue with him mainly playing Sentinel. He has been playing Sentinel in the offseason, but a bit of Initiator as well. So he'll probably have a similar character list by the end of next year. But overall, what John QT brings is an IGL that is very good. He's very good at calling. It seems like he's gone this team focused and controlled. He knows these players now. He feels comfortable with it. and he can also frag out. And 1.12 KD ratio is very impressive, especially for a role IGL that doesn't really get a lot of kills. You don't see a lot of IGLs having high KD ratio, so the fact that he did perform so well, that might also be because of M80 being a very good tier 2 team. But at the same time, a lot of that credit I think should go to John QT. So early returns for John QT have been very good. They've been winning since he's gotten there. When they face adversity, how does he adjust? How does this team adjust to the adversity now? Because they are going to see it. I know a lot of people have this team very high up on tier lists and for their pick'ems and everything like that, but they are going to face adversity throughout the year. They are going to have times where they don't look like the hottest team. So how does the coaching staff and John QT navigate that and get this team to push when the going gets tough? Now we're talking about Pancata. So Pancata, he was supposed to be part of the active roster. Zelsis was supposed to be the extra. He couldn't make it to LA in time for some of the off-season events and some of the practice stuff that they were doing. So Zelsis ended up slotting in, and it just fit like a glove. And that doesn't surprise me at all. I thought when they picked up Zelsis, I'm like, he's gonna be the extra? Really? I don't see that happen. He's way too good to be the extra. And exactly what I thought would happen happened. He made his way into the active roster, and I didn't know if it was going to be Sasi or Pancata being the odd man out, but it appears like Pancata is that guy. It is very unfortunate, his situation, but I also wouldn't totally rule out him getting into some matches this year. He's not playing in kickoff, we know that, but tens can get sick. Some of these players, weirdly enough, do get sick every now and then. So, he can probably sub into a slot like that. And, maybe this team struggles. If this team struggles, do not be surprised if you see Pancata playing some matches. Last year on Sentinels, Pancata had 417 kills, 437 deaths, 132 assists for key to ratio of 0.95. Mainly playing smokes, he played Omen, Viper, Astra, and Killjoy. Pancata might be better than Zelsis overall in terms of mechanics and just overall gameplay, but Zelsis just brings a certain energy to this team that nobody else does, so that does kind of make him more valuable for the team fit. Pancata unfortunately doesn't bring that, not that that's any slight to him or a bad thing to say about him. It's just some players are like that and some players aren't. So this roster does look very good. Keep in mind, this is mostly the same roster that we had last year, but we have 2 new additions that have fit like a glove so far. John QT should be a huge improvement on IGLing. Zelsis can play any role you need him to and be effective on it, and he brings a great energy to the team that helps this team push through. We've seen them have some crazy comebacks in the offseason. We've seen them play well against some really good teams. They won the Africa TV event, which featured some of the top teams in the world, so that definitely bodes well for them. One question that I have is, did they play too much in the offseason? They played a lot of events, they ran their own events, and they played a lot of show matches and some off-season tournaments. So do people in the Americas League and the VCT Beyond, do they already know what this team has up their sleeve? Obviously, it's been a couple months since Africa TV, so they're definitely been working and grinding and coming up with new strats and new comps and adapting to the new patch. But at the same time, if teams already know how this team plays, that can definitely hurt them. So that's kind of the good and bad about off-season events, is that you can get a lot of practice if you play in a lot of them. You can see how your roster looks before the season even starts, but at the same time you might be giving other teams a book on you before the season has even started. Not that I think that that's going to be the reason why they sink if they do, but let's talk about their map pool next. So the map stats last year were understandably pretty mediocre. Looking at their best maps last year, Bind was their best one. They were undefeated on it, 3-0 record, attack was 59, defense was 55. Ascent, 2-1 record, attack was 49%, defense was 50. For the worst maps, Haven, they did not win a single time out of the 3 matches they played. Attack win percentage was 33%, defense was 39. And Split, 2-5 record, attack 48, defense 43. And the rest of last year's map pool didn't look great for them either. Sunset looks like a really good map for them so far. We'll see how they adapt to the breeze changes with Hall being opened back up. Overall, what do I think of this team? A lot of people have this team very high. A lot of people think that this team is already one of the best teams in the world. And personally, I'm not there yet. I want to be, but I look at this roster and I still see the team from last year. I see them re-energized, refocused, a new lease on Valorant, a new lease on life, if you will. This team looks like they are poised to have a great year, and that's what scares me. I don't know if this is going to work out. On paper, they look great. They look fantastic. But just the feeling that I have, they're just coming in with such high expectations from everybody. It just feels like a collapse really could be coming here. For the bracket in kickoff, they're in the group that people are calling the group of death. They're facing Loud right away. A lot of people are picking them to beat Loud. I don't know, man. Loud scares me. Loud really scares me. I know they lost Ass Pass. They've been able to absorb losses before, so I'm not going to share who I think is winning that match yet, because I will be doing a Pick'ems video, but overall, I want to believe in Sentinels, but something about it just kind of feels like they could be ripe for a collapse, and maybe they played too much in the offseason. Maybe teams already know how they play. They look like they really want to be winning this year. I've seen this team come in with high expectations before and then just drop dead and just look terrible. So I don't expect that to happen. Do I think they're one of the best teams in the world? I need to see it. I know we saw it in the offseason, but that's the offseason. I need to see it in the VCT to truly believe it. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you think Sentinels are going to live up to the hype, or are they going to have yet another collapse and a rough season for the fans? This is my last VCT season preview. I have finished Pacific, I've finished EMEA, and now I've finished Americas, so we're all done. You can watch all of them on my channel. There's a playlist full of all of them, so you can go check that out. If you're interested in any of the other teams, you can go look at all those. I didn't do the China teams because I don't know anything about the China teams, but you can watch any other team, and this was really fun. This was an absolute grind, and Sentinels, we'll see. Please click like if you enjoyed the video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.